So now we will learn about data and storage and how to manage these two aspects in Android. So first is the file system. So before starting, I would like to declare, if you are taking the files or managing data on the Android phone, or managing to use or planning even to manage storage, then you must declare these two permissions, as they are required for storing data and reading data. Otherwise your app won't be able to do the same and result in an error. Moreover, here I have a storage file.java activity in which I have a edit text, two of them, and a text view. So basically I get the elements and then first I check whether environment.get external storage state. This is the function which I am using to check whether there is an external storage available to the device. So first I get the state and then I check whether environment.media mounted is basically a public static final string defined there, which is equal to mounted, but it may change in the future. So it is better to use the constant environment.media mounted, and I check it whether it is equal to the state, and if it is true I return true, and if it is false return false. Remember, whenever doing any kind of file storage or any processing on the data on the file stored in the system, be sure to check these conditions or you must handle the error appropriately. Then I'm getting the root storage directory by calling android.os.environment.get external storage directory, and then I'm appending to the my text this directory, and then I'm making a file by calling the new file constructor with the argument of the path where I want to create a new file. Or basically first we have to make a new folder. So then I first specify the path, that is root.get absolute path. So we get to the basic part from where we have to start storing our data, and then I have added a /download to move to the download directory. Then I call the function dir.mkdirs. Now the use of this function is that if the particular folder or the file path does not exist, Android makes sure that it creates all the necessary folders and the paths. If they do not exist and make everything fine, then I create a new file object by calling new file, first argument as this dir which I have just created above, which is basically a folder, and then the second argument as the file name along with the extension. Then I will always put my file operation in a try block, as there may be errors and there are highly chances of errors there. Then I create a file output stream by calling the new file output stream with the argument of the file that we have just created here. Then I also initialize a print writer and then call the file input stream just created in the previous step as an argument to this function. Then I use the println function. You may also use the print function if you want to print it directly through a raw buffer, and then I'm using println function to print it by lines. So I pass on the strings as a data to be written. Then I call pv.flush. Well, basically whenever you are writing anything on the file, it is basically not put on the file flush, it is remains in the buffer, in the memory buffer. Then by calling flush you finally force the print writer to put these contents into the file, and then I call pv.close, as these open print writers and open files will hang out memory, and it is very important for you as an Android developer to use as little memory as possible for your app to work smoothly and your app to be recognized as a smooth and a good performing app. Similarly, also close the file output stream you just opened. Then you can catch for errors such as file not found exception and the IO exception. Now file not found exception will be raised if the particular file was not found, while the IO exception will be raised if there is some kind of error in reading and writing to the file. Then you can also read the file by using an input stream, and then you can get this input stream by first declaring it, and then by getting the value of this input stream by calling this, that's the context.get resources.open raw resources. Now this is basically used to open resources from the assets that you have in your Android app. So basically in my assets folder I have also data file.txt, so I can open it by like this, or else you can also open a file as I mentioned earlier, how to create a file and open it. Then you can use the input stream reader, passing on the input stream you have just created, and then you can call a new buffer reader by passing the input stream data we just created, and the second argument is the buffer size. So this is the amount of data that will be in the memory, exceeding which the output will be automatically flushed. And then you have to try to read from the file. So I'm basically reading from a string, and then if it is not equal to null, then I will do all the processing, and if it is null, then I will break. It means I have either reached the end of the file or there's some output which I cannot make use of. And then dot read line is a function which is used to read each line consecutively, and then it returns null if there are more lines in the file. And then I will close my input stream reader, then my input stream, and finally the buffer reader. So this is how I will read my files from the Android phone or the tablet or any Android device, and even my local Android assets. So I may also edit my Android assets that I've created in runtime. This is basically useful if, for example, you don't want your user to update your app, but you want to update some contents that are pre-packaged with the app during runtime. So may use this functionality. And then you can also catch the IO exception here, as you may not be able to read or write the file. So this was all about file management in Android. Now there's another kind of storage we can use, that is the shared preferences. So basically, what is shared preferences? Android gives us the method for each app to store safely a set of values or set of data, each having key value pairs, and this type of storage is only available to a specific app. So each app has its own type of shared preferences. So shared preferences you can initialize by first declaring the shared preference object and then a shared preference editor object. Then your onCreate method, you can use the preference manager.get default shared preferences, passing the context as the first argument to get the shared preferences, and you are recommended to store this into a shared preference object created in your class of your activity. And you can also get the keyword editor by calling the .edit method on this keyword, that is my shared preference. So whatever shared preference variable you have just created, on that object or variable you call the .edit method to get a keyword editor. Now in your, whenever you have to store any kind of data, you just call the put string method of the keyword editor or your object, which is obtained by calling .edit method on your preference manager, with the first argument as your key or your string, which will be unique and will be used to retrieve that data, and the second argument you can call the string that you want to store. And then you can finally call .commit to finally store it to the shared preferences. Then whenever you have to read it, you can just call your getString method on your preferences. Then first you have to call shared preferences prefs that we have already created earlier. So you may want to call it again if you want to have multiple operations or threads basically on shared preference at the same time. Then you can get your shared preference, or you can directly call this if you have no more than one sets of preferences that you want. So you can call the default shared preferences here instead of this line. And then you can get the text by using the getString method on these type of preference managers. And using the getText method, you first have to specify the key, which is this unique key we are using to store the data, and the second value is basically a string that will return if this operation of retrieving data is not found. So this is the fallback option string that you have, and this will return a string, and you can use this in your application. So this was all about storage of file and data in your Android app.